following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The People's View is a show sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee. The committee meets every second Thursday at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to contact us, we have a website, nashuagop.org. And at the end of the show, you'll see some contact phone numbers or email addresses that you may want to send us your comments and recommendations. Thank you for listening in.
Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello. Today we have Bill Ohm, who was a representative and is running to get reelected at Ward 9 in Nashua. And Bill, welcome aboard, and tell everybody why you want to get back into the mix.
Well, thank you, Carl. Pleasure to see you again, my fellow former rep. Well, the reason I want to get back into the mix is probably the same reason you do, which is to get the economy going in New Hampshire. We've got a lot of opportunities for our young people that really aren't developed as well as they might. If we had a little bit better business climate, we could do better for the jobs for the people in New Hampshire, particularly the young ones. Yeah,
I agree. I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to do for this state. It has, they have a new commissioner there, relatively new, I should say.
Yeah, Jeff, the guy from
Jeff Rose,
BAE, yeah.
who used to work for BAE. I haven't seen any real activity yet, but I'm hoping that something happens. Have you ever talked to him?
Yeah, not since the last election, before he was appointed to the dread Department of Economic Development. Terrible name for a Department of Economic Development. Dread.
They need somebody that has a little bit of media exposure.
But Jeff's a hardworking guy, you know. When he was with BAE, I met him when I was a candidate, and I asked the gentleman, you know, what could we do to help business in New Hampshire, because BAE is one of our biggest employers.
Sure.
He said, well, one of the problems we have is, you know, we're trying to be a green company. We're trying to recycle some of our spent materials, but there was just a lot of bureaucracy involved with doing that. And instead of recycling the alcohol, we had to declare it hazardous waste and move it out to a reprocessing center. So I was one of the sponsors of a bill to redefine spent materials so that alcohol, which was a very processable solvent, could be recycled at the facility and not have to be treated as hazardous materials. But that brings up the topic of a lot of regulations that you and I have been involved with, Carl.
Yes. Yeah.
We both served on the commission dealing with business regulations, and the topic was, you know, how can we make business more friendly for the New Hampshire companies that want to come in here? Just recently, if you read the CNBC report on business climate, you know, New Hampshire we're now 32nd. You know, we were up in the top tiers. Now we're in the bottom half.
And we're heading further down.
Wrong direction. What's going on here?
Yeah.
The plus side is we're still really strong in the areas of a desirable place to live. I think we're number 3 on the list of a best state to live in. But the business side has been deteriorating to the point now where Massachusetts is more desirable than New Hampshire for business, and that's crazy.
Well, they have their taxes. The business taxes are lower.
Right. That's one of the big reasons.
The prime reason, I think.
Yeah. We got the business enterprise tax, the business profits tax. It's a high tax state compared to what it needs to be. But let me ask you a question. The solution to low taxes is?
Smaller government.
Smaller government.
Hey, give me a softie.
That's the easy question. The hard part is how do you get there from here?
Yeah, because everybody's afraid of giving up any money, because then that means they got to make a smaller piece of government.
Right.
It is a hard thing, but You know, one of the things that nobody seems to believe in is that if you do get more business here, you spread the base, your tax base, and you get more money. You want to get more businesses here.
Right. I mean, there's the argument of the pie. You want to increase the size of the pie instead of trying to make more and more slices out of it. You know, if you got a bigger pie, you've got more money that you can use for productive activities. Infrastructure, Carl, you were on Public Works.
Yeah, that's very necessary. You know, they finally put some tax there, but I mean, it was hard to get through.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably other ways of doing it. Again, you got to get the base, the tax base broadened.
Yeah, yeah.
And what does that? Those are two things that you're running on.
Well, it's basically trying to get the economy going and get the jobs associated with the economy, and they're closely linked.
I know the regulation it was bad, and I sort of felt that we were making some headway in 2012 with the regulations, getting people to be more listening to their customers. You know, treat them as customers instead of treating them as
adversaries.
Sources of money, and adversaries, and coming on hard and you know, trying to squeeze another nickel out of somebody on fines and stuff like that. They also were getting to do more things on the website so that people knew what kind of regulations they had to go to. They were having training sessions, etc. Have you heard anything more on that aspect? Are they continuing to approve? Or?
Yeah, I assume it's still rolling forward. You know, the one-stop shopping on the website where you can get, you know, everything you need from, you know, one source, which would be a huge plus when that's fully implemented. Because right now, or in the past, when we were trying to solve these issues, you had to go to all kinds of different agencies to get different permitting, and it just wasn't coordinated. And you'd like to be able to say, okay, Mr. Company wants to expand in New Hampshire, let me make it easy for you. Go to this website, everything you need is on here. Fill out the forms electronically, not through paper. And I know they're working very hard on the electronic submission of the forms.
Well, I haven't heard that there's actually a regular setup yet. There's individual things sound like they're trying to put it all together. But I don't see a flag flying says one-stop shop, come and solve your problems. I think what we're going to have to do is something that we did with the Justice Department, if you remember back when they wanted to some more money to do some modernization of their administration, and we said, well, we're going to hold off giving you $2 million until you put together this call center. And you remember the call center they put together? It went over very well, and they said they saved several $1 million and problems were solved more quickly because the people there were hearing that this is a problem here, here, and here, and here. And so they said, well, we better pay attention to that.
You're right, right.
Well, I hope maybe that's what we have to do, hold out a carrot with money on it and say that if you don't do this, if you don't get the one-stop shop,
then your budget's not going to be as favorable.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're going to, we'll have a contingency fund that we can take out to give the people who do their job correctly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it makes me think about UNH.
Yeah.
Here we have a state school funded by the taxpayers with really high tuition. Why is that? Isn't their mission to try to give a really good education to the broadest base of New Hampshire residents? But instead we see the stuff like, well, we're going to be a research university. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Your professors teach, 1 day a week instead of 3 days a week because they're doing research? I mean, we've got in the local area, in New England and Massachusetts, 30 miles from us, we've got world-class research institutions. I think if we were smart, we would try to partner up with those institutions and say, look, you guys got some of the best research in the world right here in Cambridge, Boston, that area. How about when it comes time to expand and you got these really good ideas and you want to build a business, how about low-tax New Hampshire, or at least what used to be low-tax New Hampshire, but we still have no sales tax, no income tax. And why don't we partner up with these institutions, say, look, you need some industrial land. We've got a nice piece of parcel here in Nashua, Hudson. Why don't you come up and build your plant up here? No sales tax for your employees, no income tax for your employees, and we'll help you with the bureaucracy of getting your permitting done with the state. I mean, that's what I would like to do.
Well, sure, and we got to get that permitting thing as a one-stop shop thing going. Yeah. I think that'll help a lot because, as we heard in the past, if you have to go to 6 different agencies, you know, and you have to do in a certain sequence.
Oh, yeah.
So it can get kind of tiresome.
Trip up on one, you got to go backwards.
And you have to coordinate it with that agency you mentioned before, DREAD.
Yes.
We have to change that name on #1. But again, I think what we need is
DREAD.
we're going to have to fight for somebody in that corner office.
Yeah, that's key, isn't it, Carl?
Yeah,
you know, if we had a governor that was more pro-business, we could really do a lot.
Well, she thinks she's pro-business over there in Turkey.
Yeah, right.
I don't know, you know,
Talking Turkey.
Turkey might be, well, they are active here. They do have a cultural center and stuff like that.
Sure.
But, you know, that wouldn't be the first place I'd go
Right.
to.
I mean, why don't you go down to Cambridge if you want to talk business?
There you go.
Get the local folks.
Yeah. Talk to them in the States. Talk to Canada.
Canada, right, our neighbor to the north.
Yeah, good to develop a better rapport with them.
Yeah. In fact, that makes me think about the whole cost of electricity,
Yeah.
some of the opportunities that we could have if we chose to. You know, we're doing these, not we, but there's many companies in this country that are now doing these large data centers because they've got cloud computing. It's more efficient to have really big data centers to handle this instead of a large number of smaller units. But these data centers take a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
And that means 2 things. You need low-cost electricity, and you need really good cooling because that power just cooks the buildings pretty hot. Now, let's take a look at our North Country, Coes County.
Mm-hmm.
We've got great cooling up there most of the year. And look at Hydro-Quebec.
Yeah.
We're talking about Canada, our neighbor to the north. What do they have? They've got really low-cost hydropower,
Yeah.
which they'd love to export into the U.S. Wouldn't it be appropriate for a governor to, you know, talk to our neighbor to the north and say, look, we got this opportunities here for data centers. We need low-cost power. You want to bring power into the country? Let's make a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I know you want to send a lot of it to the high-cost states of Connecticut
Mm-hmm.
and Mass because they have to buy this green energy at whatever cost they pay. So give us a piece of that power at a decent price.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll work out something cooperative on these data centers.
You have to do a little bit of wheeling and dealing, and that you don't see.
Right.
You don't see anybody, whether it's the
Yeah.
governor or any of the agency heads or whatever. I think they ought to be doing more.
Yeah, what people kind of misconstrue is you're looking for a win-win. What's
Yeah.
good for us and good for you.
Right.
That makes sense for a good business deal, Carl. You know that.
And power is one of the most expensive things that we have, unfortunately, that determines whether a company will come here.
Yeah, you know, a couple of years ago, there was a hearing on the Merrimack power plant, the Bow Power Plant. That's a plant that we spent over $400 million on through previous legislatures, deciding this was a good investment. But after spending $400 million, we now have the cleanest coal plant, I think, in the country and probably almost anywhere in the world. And then having spent that money and having this really clean plant, now the EPA wants to shut it down. And why do they want to shut it down?
The cost doesn't go away either.
No.
That's what they did with the reactors when they took them down. You have that cost that.
Yeah, the decommissioning cost
Yeah. Well,
and the sunk cost.
Yeah, the sunk cost of you're going to pay it off anyway, so you might as well use it. Let it depreciate itself.
Yeah.
Well, you got your campaign going, and you got helpers all lined up and everything.
You're looking at them.
One-man outfit. Well, I know it's hard to get people to volunteer to help, but I think people that might find it interesting to go around and helping learn more about what happens, how to get elected in New Hampshire. and what it means, so how you talk to people and find out what their concerns are. I mean, we've had other people on the show talking about education, talking about medical areas, all these things, somebody's got to solve those problems.
Yeah, and you learn what those problems are going door to door. When I first campaigned 4 years ago, I knew nothing about campaigning. I was told, knock on doors, introduce yourself, find out what the voters are concerned about. And you learn all kinds of stuff. One of the first persons I talked to was a guy working on his boat up in Ward 8. And he was beside himself. He said, this government of ours, they took an increase in our boat registration fees to set up these boat ramps, and they never put in the boat ramps. They took the money. I mean, it's like $50, but it really bothered him.
Sure.
So I made a note of that. I talked to a number of people who were doing homeschooling. I knock on the door, and the lady's there with her daughter, and, I'm Bill Ohm, running for state rep, just want to say hi. And he talks about homeschooling, how he really doesn't trust the local school system to do what's best for her daughter. I mean, she thinks that, and I think she's probably right about this. I know my daughter better than anybody else. I know what's best for her, and I just don't feel confident that the school system is going to teach the things my daughter needs to know. So they do homeschooling. And actually, when I learned a lot about homeschooling and alternative education, I got involved with the bill that we passed 2 years ago, Carl, to allow educational credits for people who were of limited means and feel that something besides the traditional school is best for them. Now, I went to public schools for 12 years in the city of Chicago. I had a great education, but that's not for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that people want to have their own choice with education is one of the things I learned knocking on doors.
Well, I think there's a lot that goes to local control and stuff that you want to be able to
Talking Agenda 21 and the core standards and all that.
All sort of things that.
There seems to be a lot of top-down decisions as to what we think is best for your kids.
That's right.
And a lot of people that I talk to aren't comfortable with that kind of approach to education.
Yeah, I know we felt that we had to get involved with our children's education too. But Bill, we have a number that we can call you, or the people that are in Ward 9 that want to vote for you, or tell you their problems. Why don't you just let the audience know where?
Sure. Well, the best way to get a hold of me is my home phone number, 603-891-2306. And the other way to get a hold of me is my cell phone. That's probably even better than my home phone because I'm out knocking on doors a lot, or I should be. My cell phone number is 617-290-4114. My website, www.billohm.com. Talks about my voting record in the past couple of years, what I stand for, and some of the solutions I have in mind.
I think you were on the Ways and Means Committee, weren't you?
I was.
And I think that's one of the busier committees. And you did a good job because you really worked on getting the funds enumerated properly.
Right. We didn't pull any punches as to what the real numbers were going to be for revenue. What we found in the past is the previous administration would decide how much they wanted to spend. And they would tell Ways and Means, well, come up with the money. And that's backwards. You don't spend first and figure out how you're going to get the money second.
And they didn't have it anyway.
They didn't have it anyway. They lied about it.
That's the same thing. The budget that they're working under now was really generated by your budget in the 2010 to 12 period. And we got all the money again just right. But again, they spent too much money. Bill, you got to get elected so we can get,
Thanks, Carl.
we'll get Ways and Means back.
Hold a sign for me in November.
All right. You got to hold one for me.
I'll do.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. We'll have you back. You have a primary this time, so
I do. It's a great district. I've got lots of candidates who want to run, so we'll
have you back again in August, and we'll talk some more about how it's going for you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.